All right, here we go.
Shut up and sit down.
I don't think so. Homie, don't play that.
Yo, 7 Deuce Deuce, what up, bro? Why you always lagging? You're so slow. Dude, come on, I just wanna ride.
You are listening to the Dialed Podcast with Matt Legrand, Evan Price, Lance Hepler, and Jake Von During. Enjoy it, but be warned, may cause drowsiness.
All I wanna do is ride my bike my whole life. All I wanna do is ride my bike my whole life.
Since ancient times, people everywhere have been caught up in all kinds of trends and traditions.
All I wanna do is ride my bike my whole life. Never thought twice.
One trend that I despise is the trend of stupidity.
Oh, I love my bike and I've been riding.
It's very stupid to act stupid when you're not stupid. So that must mean that everyone is stupid for acting stupid when they know they're smarter than that.
Hi, and welcome back to the Dial Podcast. I am Jake Von During, and I'm here with Matt Legrand.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen of the internet? You guys are looking fantastic. Ooh. You do. You really do.
Fantastic.
You really look good.
All right. To Matt's right, coming to us over the iPhone network here, Mr. Lance friggin' Hepler.
Lance friggin' Hepler, here I am, coming you from the echo chamber in Mesa, Arizona.
Mesa, Arizona.
Yay.
How's the weather down there, Lance?
It's cold. Okay, it's Arizona cold. So
Yeah.
It was like 35 degrees this morning, and they're having a cold snap here
Oh, boy.
in Arizona. So
Does it make you sad that, as a snowbird, that it's a little bit warmer here in the Pacific Northwest than it is down there in Arizona?
Sunny and warm. For once.
it does make me sad. Although I will say this. I've done 20 hours on my bike this last week and not a single raindrop or wetness anywhere. So
I didn't get any raindrops on me. Did you, Matt?
Except for your crotch.
that was a soapy, silky mess.
Sloppy, gross. Just kidding. Sure, it's pristine.
Awesome. All right. Well, enough of the pleasantries. Where's Evan at today?
I think he was just work. I'm not sure.
Working, coaching.
Just work. He's a working
Fixing
man.
people.
Someone's got to work around here to make money for us.
That's for sure.
Oh, Lance, you're going to be going to a camp or something like that here pretty soon. Is that coming up? That's next week, right?
That's next week. Yeah, it starts next Tuesday.
Okay.
So
Are you gonna call in? Are you gonna call in from camp?
if we record on Monday, I won't be at the camp yet.
Oh, okay. So good. And the Mets going to Hawaii here pretty soon. So
Yes, I think it's like the 6th through the 13th of February, something like that. If you're in Maui, hit me up.
there you go.
Let me know what we could do.
We might have to get a few podcasts put in the can for everybody. All right.
Yeah, we
Well,
should do that.
pleasantries out of the way. Let's do.
What you talking about, Willis? What you talking about? What you talking about, mister? What you talking about, doctor? What you talking about, lady? What you talking about? What you talking about, mister?
The
What you
topic,
talking about?
because we're
What
mixing
you boys
it up.
talking about today?
What are we
What's the
talking
topic?
We're talking about metric system versus imperial.
Yes, we are.
We're talking about the metric system. Metric system?
Talk about the metric system? Is that what you're talking about today, Wells? Yeah.
I guess.
Metric versus the imperial system. And there's some questions here. And this is kind of like, I don't know, it's appropriate to talk about in the cycling world. And I just wanted to give a little bit more of a history, a little bit of a background, and what our thoughts are on it. And maybe this podcast will influence the cycling industry to go one way or the other.
Almost everyone on the planet uses the metric system. But why has the United States held out? Well, there are a ton of reasons, both big and small.
Or maybe the entire world. United States.
There you go.
Maybe the entire world will switch to the imperial system.
All right. Well, obviously, it seems like pretty much the world uses the metric system, and then the U.S. and a couple spotty other little places here and there use the empirical system.
The best way to think about this is there's countries that have been to the moon that use the imperial system, and then there's everyone else.
There are two kinds of countries, those that use the metric system and those that landed on the moon. You know who led the design team for the Saturn V? This guy. Listen to that deep Alabama accent.
This weight dictates the amount of fuel and the numbers of motors.
An American through and through. Ignore this photo of him. Those are just some German friends he made while on gap year in Europe. This Alabama native used metric. In fact, he despised British units. So much so that he designed a rocket during his gap year to fly to England to show them how great the metric system was. The Saturn V was designed, like nearly everything in NASA at the time, with a mixture of both metric and imperial units. Just read the mission reports for Apollo 11 for proof of this. It switches between inches and centimeters constantly. It's a mess. Anyone working with this report would have had to be hyper aware of what unit of measurement they were using.
That's really the only way to think of it. And that's not exactly true, right? Because there's, I think, 3 total countries that are technically using the imperial system. It's like one small, it's the United States and like 2 tiny countries, and I can't even remember what their names are. I feel a little guilty that I don't know who they are.
America, Liberia, and Myanmar, a prestigious trio.
They don't matter.
Countries, like kind of island countries.
It doesn't matter.
I don't know.
Yeah, they're nobodies.
They're nobodies.
So it's been 230 years since the United States was almost going to be on the metric system. Almost.
Maybe.
It was close.
Maybe. So
close.
So the metric system was developed in France.
Our saga begins during the French Revolution, the goal of which was to overthrow the French monarchy and bring about a more enlightened and rational society. That included replacing idiosyncratic traditional measurements with a decimal-based system.
Mm-hmm.
And the imperial system was developed in England, I think. Who knows?
Officially, the United States uses a system known as the U.S. customary measures. It's adapted from the imperial system that we inherited from our British forefathers, and we've clung to their feet and ounces ever since.
A lot of it's based on weird stuff, like the foot is literally from someone's like foot.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other things too, like there's a measurement that's like, this is how much some piece of grain weighed, and they just like rolled with that. And so it's like stuff that was very handy to people. Like you have this little item in your pocket, or use your forearm or whatever, like all these little ways to measure.
A foot is what it sounds like. An inch is about the width of an adult thumb. If you have a body, you can use these measures. Sure, stacking up 12 thumb widths to make a foot, that's still kind of weird, but it's not so weird that we're clamoring to change it.
Yeah, and for all intents and purposes, it works, kind of.
Kind of.
I just think, me personally, one's a little bit more precise or a little bit more easy to grasp, or it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are certain applications where the imperial system probably works a little bit better.
I think the easy argument is like, for meters, you take from a meter to centimeters. It's like, okay, everything's going to be like 10 based, 100 based, right? It's like millimeter, centimeter, meter, kilometer. All of those is just like they're easy to calculate.
Yeah.
The metric system uses standard, consistent prefixes based on powers of 10. So if you know your prefixes, you can measure a lot or a little of anything using one base unit.
Whether you're doing sort of very precise measurements in chemistry or you're looking at astronomical differences, that's where metric is useful, because you can just move, if you want to move the unit, you just, move the decimal point.
Do you ever find it hard to make those calculations in your head, or do you have a way that you kind of try and cross things over?
From meters to miles, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
I have a bit of a running background, and so everything is based on 5K or 10K or those base, and those numbers are nice and round, and I can work with them. So if you give me some sort of like weird, 36K or whatever, I'm like, okay, well that is getting, I can kind of try to figure out what it's close to. But the problem is, if you think about this, I'm translating it to miles in my head, which we shouldn't need to do. We should just be like, oh no, it's 36 kilometers. Like that's how far it is. The fact that we even translate it is the problem.
Yeah. I can remember just starting out in the mountain bike racing world.
Yeah.
Everything was done in miles. They really didn't, especially where I was at, they didn't use anything in the metric system. So once I started to dip my toe into the waters of road and training and riding, and you start to get more of the people, they start talking in units of metric measurements, and you're like, wait a second. And like, not wanting to be like a standout or a total noob. You don't really say anything. And then you're back home like, all right, I know that I need to start learning this. I need to start making some correlations. And it's to this day, I can remember the time where I started to try and make a conscious effort as to how far, a kilometer was with respect to a mile. And a mile is about 0.6. It's about 0.6 of a mile to 1 kilometer.
0.62.
And you kind of have to know these things in bike racing, because when you get to the end of a race, you're going to get like 3 km to go, 2 km to go, 1 km to go, 500 meters, 200 meters, and then the finish. And if you overshoot that, if you don't know exactly how far out 1K is and you can't hold it for 0.6 of a mile, that's not going to make any sense to you. So I started training based on those measurements so that I could understand better like where I needed to be and what was going to happen and how much of an effort that I had to put into that.
In your mind, when you see 3K to go, do you translate it to mileage, or you're just like, no, 3K?
I still think 3K, but I know roughly in the back of my head that it's
like
just
2 miles.
It's just under 2 miles. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how I equated that.
Yeah.
And those ones, like when I think of 3K, like I'll pay more attention to that when I'm in a time trial than I am in a road race.
Well, what else do you think about in time trials?
Nothing, just trying to tick off those damn Ks.
Just the pain.
How much pain you're in? Just pain. Just how much pain you're experiencing.
And there's something to be said. Like it feels like kilometers go by faster. It's a bigger number, but they feel like they go by a little bit faster. So sometimes that's a little bit easier to chew on when you're out there in the suffer zone, in the pain cave, killing it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's true.
Just my 2 cents. Lance, how does your brain work? Now,
no one knows.
And here's another question.
Everyone's
too.
asking the same question.
You
How
worked
does Lance's brain work?
You worked in dentistry for many, many, many years. What was the standard unit of measurement there?
Ooh, good question.
Everything's in millimeters, so it's all metric.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the size, like the size of teeth or the length of certain things, you measured everything in millimeters. So it's all kind of metric.
Is the metric system the norm for all the entire medical industry?
I think it is. Yeah.
Metrication experts say the U.S. is situated along a metric spectrum, and we're more metric than we realize. Our food labels and pharmaceuticals, I guess for that matter, street drugs. Our drug dealers sell cocaine in grams. We're likely to continue this slow but steady creep towards full metric. But individuals in their daily lives didn't have a strong enough incentive for going to all the trouble. So they didn't.
Yeah, I think medicines
most
are
of the things,
milliliter probably for medications.
Yes, see, and we have ounces, right? And they are milliliters. Yeah, so, I mean, all our labeling here in the U.S. is all in ounces.
Another bill in 1992 required businesses to use metric for consumer goods, too. Ever wonder why your soda can lists both ounces and milliliters?
As far as like bike racing goes, I always think in terms of, 100 kilometers, 100K is about 62 miles.
Mm-hmm.
So 10K is about 6.2 miles. So I'm always dividing things by 6.2 or crunching numbers to figure out kind of where it's at. It really is. It's dumb. We should be metric.
Pro tip, use the metric
Why
system.
don't you use the metric system, man? So annoying.
Metric, please.
Just use a fucking metric system, for God's sake.
We're all resisting it because we've grown up with it this way, and it's kind of silly. As soon as we completely changed, or if we would change to metric, we'd be used to it in a few months and it'd be done with.
Don't hold your breath for a metric uprising in America.
Almost every nation on earth has fallen under the yoke of tyranny, the metric system.
But
wrong. We're not going to be used to it in a few months, Lance. Okay. You think Lance thinks it should be metric. Jake, you think we should be on metric?
Oh, 100% metric.
I may or may not agree, but for the podcast, you bet your sweet ass I'm going to be disagreeing with you guys. And Alex, and I'll tell you why. Lance, how about your kids? What are they? Are they like, would you say that you're more into metric than they are, or the other way around?
No, I'm way more into metric than they are. Just
Jake,
because
same question
I'm
for
more
you.
world traveled. Yeah.
My kids are 100% still the empirical system, and that's just because of school. I mean,
same with mine.
Yeah.
So if anything,
our schools
generations below us are going the wrong direction.
Yeah.
We're not making a dent in this, like, let's move to the metric system.
Indoctrination
as much as I wish I had taught my kids, like, every time I describe something, I should always describe it in metric. That's a great aspiration. Hasn't happened. And my kids are like, well, what's that in miles? Like they don't, my kids know what like 5K is or whatever because of running or whatever, but they still don't like describe it as a 5K. They'll say, 3 miles or whatever. So, and with swimming, you'd think that all my kids do swimming, a side note, but like you'd think that they would be a little bit into meters or have some concepts of meters versus yards.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so many things that make more sense about it when you get into like measurement of temperature. So freezing, it makes sense to say zero instead of 32. And it makes sense for boiling to be 100 instead of 212 degrees Fahrenheit.
US measures are dumb, but they make sense.
When they actually figured, like when they decided on like the meter, they did some calculations on the planet, which is, I'm probably going to screw this up. So any sort of history buffs will come in and correct us on the podcast in the comments, but they did this measurement of the planet and they basically said like, well, let's divide, from here to the North Pole. And they could figure that out with using stars and some math. And they figured that it would be a quarter of the planet, I think is like 10, they wanted it to be 10,000 meters or whatever. And so they just kept dividing it up to figure out what a meter would be. And so the loop around the whole planet is supposed to be like 40,000 kilometers or something like that. I should double check all of this stuff. But that's how they figured out like what a meter would be. It's based on the size of our planet, which is that's a great number.
A foot, for example, is more relatable than a meter, which was originally defined as 1/10,000th the distance from the equator to the North Pole.
Although they made a mistake. And so if you look at the circumference of the Earth or whatever, it's just off of that. And they quickly figured out that they had made this like tiny math error. And the problem was that the meter was getting popular as a measurement tool, and it was getting popular and they couldn't quite change it in time.
Oh no.
So it's something slightly off.
Did we get into why we're not using the metric system? Did we talk about that yet? In terms of...
No.
Okay. So in 1793, let me check my notes here. Thomas Jefferson was very keen on switching the U.S. over to the metric system.
Thomas Jefferson was Secretary of State, and Enlightenment sympathetic George Washington was the president. Jefferson championed a decimal-based system of weights and measures and was hoping to convert the U.S. to just such a system. In 1793, France sent botanist and aristocrat Joseph Dombey with a meter-long rod and a 1-kilogram copper cylinder to demonstrate the system for Jefferson in the U.S. But his ship was blown off course by a storm. He was captured by British privateers who looted his stuff and tossed him in prison, where he died.
And then once it did finally make its way here, because it happened down the road,
Congress wasn't ready to act on metric just yet. It wasn't clear if the metric system would even survive in France, thanks to political upheavals and fallout from Napoleon's rise and fall. And besides, our main trading partner, Great Britain, still used inches and pounds.
Yeah, it was like, I could be wrong if this is like supposed to be delivered to the Secretary of State or something, and then by the time that it had gotten delivered there, that position had been moved on or whatever. I just looked up the Earth's circumference, 40,000 kilometers. So it's actually slightly off.
Okay, yeah,
Look, so
75 kilometers.
75 kilometers off of the measurement that they were supposed to do correctly. But anyway, that whole bit about pirates, it's like, oh, well, we're not on the metric system because of pirates. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. And it could have also been like, I think there's some unpopularity with France at the time where the meter was developed. So who knows? But England switched over and they're not usually super keen on the French, and they were the ones that developed the imperial system.
By the mid-1900s, the metric system really took off as the world's economies became more globalized. The UK metricated in 1965 so that they could do more trade with the European Common Market. The United States was part of this general trend towards metric. In 1971, Congress published a report, not so subtly titled, A Metric America, A Decision Whose Time Has Come, which recommended the U.S. go metric within the next 10 years. But by the time the Metric Conversion Act of 1975 hit President Gerald Ford's desk, it was a toothless bill that said metrication was encouraged, but voluntary.
I would say, depending on who you talk to in England, they'll still have some crazy weird measurements, right? Like
a stone or something.
A stone.
Like that. Yeah.
Like, what is that?
Isn't that like 30 pounds or something like that?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
How many?
Probably look that up.
I feel like whenever you're talking to someone from England, they're like, "Well, how many stones do you weigh?" I'm like, I don't know. That's great. Good question.
One
stone.
I'm 1 stone.
So what do you think is holding back the United States from making that switch? Do you think it's like the apprehension of telling people that, no, you're not going to use this form of measurement anymore? Or is it financially driven? What do you think it is?
Lance thinks it would take 2 months to transition over. I think it would take 2 generations. I think it would take 2 generations. I think our kids are not going to switch over easily. And then it's like maybe their grandkids will be like, yeah, sure, no problem. We like think in meters, we think in kilometers. But I think it's going to take a long time.
The US is one big measurement gray area. We haven't officially switched to metric, but we haven't shunned it either. It's a compromise between science and industry, which benefit from metric, citizens who feel no reason to change,
kilograms,
and a government that's trying to keep everyone happy.
As you know, the US is already metric, essentially. It just has this facade of measures. The thing to do is just to wait for that facade to slowly crumble away, and that will happen with time.
A stone, 14 pounds.
14 pounds?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
it's important for me to know.
Or 6.35 kilograms for those of our friends listening in the metric system. Going back to it, I've read a couple different things because I was kind of curious about that as well. And I think that there would be an adoption, but it's going to take at least a full generation of kids. I think that you got your people now, probably your millennials, your Gen Xers. The baby boomers are kind of out of the question here because,
they're never going to change.
They're never going to change. I think your Gen Xers would be open to the idea. There might be some apprehension there. I think millennials and your Gen Zs would be definitely open to the idea of a new measurement. And it just needs to start now, though, because if it doesn't, it's going to be a whole nother generation of kids that are, taught and indoctrinated with this whole imperial system. And I think that they're going to stick with that as well. The things that I've read, though, that are a big reason why we're still using it is the cost that would go into it.
In 1875, the United States was one of 17 signatories to the Treaty of the Meter. We might have signed the treaty, but there was no way we were switching to metric. This came right after America's massive industrial buildup and westward expansion. We'd just built a lot of infrastructure. Powerful industrialists blocked attempts at metricating. They argued that the cost of replacing all of their equipment would be prohibitively expensive, and if they were forced to convert, it would damage American industry.
Billions of dollars. If you think about it, like every single sign that has any kind of mileage on it's going to need to be changed.
There's one sign in the United States, and I can't remember where it is. It might even be in Arizona or somewhere.
Congress passed a law, the 1975 Metric Conversion Act, which led to the United States Metric Board that would educate people about the system. This created the only metric highway sign in the U.S., the Interstate 19 connecting Arizona to Mexico. But it didn't go much further than that. Unlike the UK, Canada, or Australia, the law made the switch voluntary instead of mandatory. And of course, people resisted the change, and the metric board couldn't enforce the conversion. So President Reagan ended up disbanding the board in 1982.
Obviously, it's an official sign. Are they just trying to be funny, or is it like is it near like a town of like a lot of
remember the
people
story behind it? I'll look up the story behind it.
Like that? So a good example is of a country that switched not too terribly long ago, kind of in our generation, would be Canada, correct?
Did they?
I believe that they switched in, well, maybe it was just before you were born.
Only metric highway in the United States.
Where's that?
Highway 19. I'm looking it up.
Huh. It would be Canada, and I think that they switched, if I'm not mistaken, in like the mid to late 70s, and it took them a bit of time to get everything fully converted over, and there was quite a bit of a cost that came along with that, but now they're fully, for the most part, if I'm not mistaken, they're fully metric.
There was a Metric Conversion Act of 1975 by President Ford. How do you guys think that turned out?
Not good.
A stretch of highway in Tucson, Arizona. I don't know anyone that's close to Tucson or heading to Tucson. Do you, Lance, you know anyone?
I'll have to check it out.
I've actually been here before, from Arizona to Nogales near the Mexican border.
And we need Lance to go down there and take a picture and post that on Instagram.
I have headed that direction because Tombstone, the town Tombstone is down there, like south of Tucson. And so I have been down to Tombstone before, and I must have driven on the highway that had metric.
I bet you did. I bet you did. Yeah, I've been to that border town. I went there. We just went over the border and did some shopping. It was fun.
Gotcha. How would it change your guys' day-to-day? I mean, would it make life any easier for you? Changing? Is there a pro to this? I mean, we already kind of work in this realm quite a bit in the cycling stuff that we're doing, and that's why I like it over Imperial, because it's a lot easier of a unit of measurement, in my opinion, to work with and to think about and rationalize. But I still think that there's a lot of...
I don't think it would change my day-to-day.
No? I mean,
I don't think so.
No. Well, for the coding that you do, obviously there's not going to be anything that's going to happen there. But,
Right.
like cooking or driving or your training, does it change anything? Does it make life any easier or more simple for you?
I don't think so.
And that's the question that I've asked myself before. Is like, one person's not going to make this happen, but I'm thinking to myself, like, well, if we were to switch from imperial to metric, is it going to make my life any better or different? It might make it a little bit easier for the stuff that I'm doing in the cycling world, but for all intents and purposes, it's almost already all there. The rest of my life, it doesn't really make that much of a difference.
It only would make a difference if you traveled and you were in different places that had the metric system. You wouldn't be quite so lost.
Correct.
But even when you do travel, you kind of figure things out fairly quickly. You just kind of adjust to it, I don't know that it would really change your life or make things easier. No, you'd have to like buy all new measuring devices in your house, for cooking and measuring, and
a lot of them,
everything would change.
A lot of them will have both, right? Because
speedometers. Yeah.
So I bet a lot of our car speedometers have both.
They do.
Speedometers.
Yeah, it has the imperial on the outside and the metric on the inside of your speedometer. Usually, if you're looking at it from the needle that goes from left to right.
Yeah. Someday our great grandkids will look at that stuff and be like, "Oh, amazing! Look at that! It shows in miles an hour. How retro!"
I just think it's funny though to think that there are so many things in this world that can change on a dime, and then in a moment's notice, where this is now that, or things are moving along at like an exponential pace right now in terms of like technology and development. It feels like they could do the same, make it a little bit more uniform. And I think to make the world a little bit closer by using all of the same unit of measurement. I know this isn't going to be earth changing or anything like that, but
let me ask you a question. What you've got a computer in front of you. What size is this computer?
16 inch.
Oh
yeah, exactly.
How many millimeters?
Have no clue.
Right. Like, I just think right now we're in the thick of it. It would be, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it, even though it's more fun to argue with you guys. It's just going to be a big project, an expensive project.
If this is a 16-inch computer, what size is it if you go over to Europe? Do they call it a 16-inch over there as well because it's an American company and that's what their number is? Or do they...
I don't know.
I mean, they have different keyboards. Question. I know that when we had an exchange student, Maria, here, she specifically, when she was here, she wanted to purchase a computer because they were a lot less expensive than over there. And then she had to order one that had a Spanish keyboard. On it because it had the tilde key over like the enye and whatnot. So,
exactly.
I thought that was interesting, but that still came in as I think it was a 13-inch MacBook Air. They didn't call it a metric system, but obviously they've got computers that are customized based on what area of the world that you live in. I'm just curious, do they market them as a different number? Maybe pull up the Apple website and see what they say if you switch over to like
VPN somewhere else and then look at it. I have a feeling that they probably say 16-inch or something.
You think so?
I don't know.
Like the bike world, there are still quite a few things that are both. So more specifically, mountain biking, you still see a lot of imperial measurements in there, like frame sizes and wheels.
That's weird.
Headsets.
Why is mountain biking and not
probably
road biking's more European and mountain bikes are more American?
More pioneered here, in the United States. So the mountain biking was born here. So you probably have a lot of those standardized measurements, but they're still using a lot of products that kind of cross over between the two. When we talk about like headsets, they typically are measured, or like a steer tube is measured in the metric or the imperial system, not the metric system, but everything else on a road bike is going to be pretty much the metric. So
it's so odd that they would mix and match.
Yeah, it can get pretty confusing for folks too. So I don't know.
But like in mountain bikes, you have a 29er mountain bike that has 29-inch wheels. I mean, they didn't call it a 700 mountain bike with
they very well have
millimeter.
Yeah, they could have.
They could have.
Yeah, they measure the same, correct?
It's close.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
What do they call mountain bike, like 29er mountain bikes in Europe? Would they say like this is a 29er?
I think so.
It's a great question.
I'm pretty sure.
I think it's just a 29er. Yeah.
Well, and weird. They've also got the 27.5 wheel standard too. That they tried to push the 650B. Mm-hmm. You only see the 650B. It seems like in the gravel and the road bikes, and then the mountain bike community is still calling it a 27.5, and those are in essence kind of the same measurement.
Why mountain bike community? Why? We need to know. Someone's like, screw that metric system. Someone's probably cranky about it.
So I don't
Because
know.
it wasn't born in Marin County, I believe, near San Francisco. So, those greasy Americans had to put their own stamp on it.
Do you guys have any pros or cons of the imperial system?
Pros are, I think the only pro is that it's what we know.
Feet and ounces might be clunky, but the US and the UK haven't ditched them because they just work.
Like that's what it feels like to me. Like that's the pro.
I tend to agree with you on that. It's just that's what you were taught, and that's how your brain is wired. And not to say that you can't rewire it and learn.
I mean, this would be an extreme stretch, but maybe it's easier to be like, oh, count off 10 feet by like just walking it. I don't know. That's a stretch because it's not going to be right, but it's close.
I mean, if you think about like all the medical world and the sciences and whatnot, they all use the metric system. So that is more of a precise measuring tool.
According to the CDC, about 3,000 to 4,000 kids are brought to the ER due to unintentional medication overdose every year. And conversion errors for dosage are to blame.
Yeah, they should. Now, my uncle works with NASA projects. He's not like on NASA, but he actually works at the University of Arizona. But he works on these NASA projects like satellites and all kinds of different things. Like he's working on this project right now where they're testing this project for drilling into the one of the moons of Europa, I think is one of the moons of Jupiter. And anyway, so they wanted to like drill down and they're testing this product and they do everything in metric, right? He was also on this project a couple years ago that was going to Mars. And one of the engineers calculated stuff in imperial, one of them in metric, and it ended up crashing the entire system into the planet of Mars just because of this poor calculation. Millions of dollars were lost.
Oh, no.
And again, all comes back to mixing and matching imperial and metric.
Living half in one world and half in the other has been costing us. Perhaps most infamously, there's the time that NASA crashed an orbiter into Mars. The Mars Climate Orbiter reported its thruster firings in metric newtons, while ground control systems used pounds, resulting in a navigation error enough to send the $125 million orbiter crashing through the Martian atmosphere.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. That was one of the projects he was on. He was not the engineer that did that, but he was on, I don't know. I can't remember exactly what system he was on. We actually went and we watched the launch of that. We went to Cape Canaveral, like as a family, in Florida, and watched the launch of that. It was really cool. Yeah.
Has trying to like kind of calculate in your head ever screwed you guys up in any way, shape, or form?
I can't think of any time where I've messed it up and it's caused any sort of destruction of an entire NASA satellite system.
Yeah.
In my history, but yeah, I don't know. You know, I think it would be like if you were in Europe or something and you're trying to calculate something. Like I'm sure there's some issues there that way, but I don't know.
When I was there, I mean, I did everything like with Google Maps, so it didn't matter. I mean, my Google Maps is set to the imperial system, and so it just told me how long in miles, it would take to get there, even though I'm following signs on the highway. But I had Google Maps up. It makes it dummy proof,
Did it say like turn coming up in half a mile? And you're like, no problem.
Yeah, right. It didn't say, 1K or 900 meters.
Has it ever been a situation working on bikes that it's been a problem for you using the metric system, or do you feel like that actually helps you? I know this is kind of like a weird arbitrary question and / topic that we're working on right here, but I don't know. I'm trying to wrap my head around it, and I was hoping that you guys could like sway me to think back the other way, and you're just pulling me more towards the...
You know what's annoying?
What?
So Allen wrenches are in like metric or imperial. And I just like look at them. I'm like, I don't know. Like I can't look at it and be like, this is, unless you like look at the little numbers on there. Like I can't just like look at it and tell the difference.
Yeah.
And like especially if you're grabbing like a set of them, and I kind of just have a whole bunch of them floating around the house. And so I'm always like, is this going to work? And I put it in there to see if it's going to work or not. And like half the time I'm like, oh, this is just barely off. And it's because it's the difference between imperial and metric. So that's just a stupid problem.
I've gotten rid of all of my imperial Allen wrenches that were loose. I only have one that I can think of, and it's on a self-contained device where it doesn't come off, and that thing is colored yellow. And then I have the same one in gray that's going to be the metric system, but all of my loose Allen wrenches are all going to be metric, and I can definitely look at those and 9 times out of 10 tell you exactly which size it is from a distance, just because I work with them so often.
That's what you do all the time. Yeah. Mine are just, remember I told you my house is always a mess. It's just like stuff like Allen wrenches floating around the house. It would drive you crazy. It would drive you crazy. Sure.
It does. It kind of sucks though, because like for the cycling world, I've bought a ton of tools. There are a ton of tools, and they're all just about all geared around the metric system. But then you start getting into some projects if you're working on an American car or if you're working around your house or whatnot, and all of a sudden they switch over to the empirical system, and you're like, well, that kind of sucks. Now I have to go buy more tools that are very close to the same, almost going to work. But you try them, and sometimes it's just a hair too big. You're like, well, can I get that off without stripping it? Maybe try it.
But do it. Just try it.
I feel like this is just a simple case of the United States as a whole being a little bit arrogant and stubborn about the whole switch. And I think I can't think of an honest to goodness good reason why we need to stay.
The British imperial system, like everything British, is based on antiquated units of measurement, like measuring your country's importance by counting the number of countries you have invaded and pillaged. A measurement that made sense 100 years ago, but it's time to move on.
Yeah, I get it. People are going to have a hard time with change. Yeah. It's not going to be something they're going to want to do right away. And then there's going to be a cost that goes with that. But hey,
it is crazy,
in a day and age where we're looking for reasons to give people jobs and kind of to, get the economy churning and burning and whatnot, there would be a lot of things that would have to be purchased again. And for some people, that might be a hassle because all of a sudden you've got to,
if you're
get new measuring cups or something like that. Or if you're a tool shop,
right? Like that could be huge.
Yeah.
That could be a huge expense for you.
But I'm sure those are few and far between. So I'm sure that there could be some sort of an assistance program or something along those lines.
I mean, for like the basics, like road signage and stuff, like that could be part of an infrastructure bill. And I always think that those are, and this is just my opinion, I always feel like infrastructure is such a good thing to invest in.
Sure.
Like that's where more, like if you want to sell me on more taxes, like sell me on infrastructure.
Yeah.
Not, other crazy expenses that, $5,000 hammers or whatever that the government's buying. But like the infrastructure, I feel like that would be fantastic.
The metric system standardized everything and made commerce, trade, and collecting taxes easier.
And I get it. And I quite enjoy using the system because I think it's just easier to kind of comprehend. It just makes more sense. It's a little bit more logical.
Besides the fact that the majority of the world uses it, the metric system makes conversions a lot easier.
I wonder if they could do it like federal government is going to do everything metric, and then like any state by state could choose what they want to do, right? Because you've got like state highways and state roads and things like that. And then just let it take 2 generations because it's going to take that long to switch over. Just let it take the time.
2 generations is not going to matter because all the cars are going to be driving themselves. And
I hope so. Maybe they'll be careful of cyclists.
Won't need any signs out there at all. Just push a button and you get there via the Jetsons. You're going to be flying. So flying cars coming soon. Can you think of a single pro other than you get to keep a few bucks in your pocket because you don't have to, a single pro of like staying with the imperial system?
I think, that's the big one, right? Where it's like because we've done it for a long time, all the products that are made that way, keeping up with that tooling, that's a lot of companies. That's a lot of tools. That's a lot of, industries that are based on a specific metric, and changing that would be expensive.
The most American of American businesses saw the economic benefits of switching. DuPont, Caterpillar, Ford, IBM, GM, John Deere, and Xerox were all on their way to metric before the Metric Conversion Act of 1975. The process was easier, cost less, and saved more than the companies estimated. Before metrication, GM had over 900 fan belts of various sizes in their supply chain. After metrication, they only needed 100 sizes. and that reduced the cost of warehousing all their parts. Not only did they recoup their conversion costs, they realized a profit. Caterpillar said their switch to metric saved them millions of dollars. All of these companies managed the changeover by starting with new product designs. Designers and engineers made the switch first, then people on the manufacturing floor, then the sales and field technicians. They used incremental training programs that GM summed up like this: teach only those who need to know, only what they need to know, and only when they need to know it. And that's the approach companies have taken with consumers. The stuff we buy from multinational companies is designed and produced to metric specifications, from your toothpaste to your car, even if it ends up with US customary units on the label.
So cost would be a huge one. Yeah, and I do think that for a long period of time, you're going to have people just trying to translate it in their head, or even, just that constant work that would be needed for that.
Why do I need to remember all these numbers? Because imperial is a convoluted mess of measurement units invented by people who married their cousins. That's why.
And that's going to take a long time. And then to have that pass votes-wise, wow. Our current, political system, the way it is, I don't know if that would ever get passed.
What do you mean? They get along fantastically well. They communicate well. They share ideas.
I almost feel like whoever proposes it, the other one would just be like, nope, we're against it because the other party proposed it. Like, no matter what it is.
Becomes polarized and partisan.
For no reason.
Yeah. For no reason, exactly. We need some adults to step up into politics, I think, at some point in time. But let's not go there. Let's digress here. I just think that it would be a win. I think that ultimately it would help people better understand things and maybe be a little bit more precise. And I think there would be more precision in general if we were to get everybody on the same page.
How many millimeters are there in a meter? It's in the name. Milli, 1,000. Now, how many meters are there in a kilometer? Once again, it's in the damn name. Kilo, 1,000. Given a measurement in kilometers but want meters, just shift the decimal place over 3 places. No calculation needed. There is no room for error. It's a simply better system.
I think the world becoming a smaller and smaller place day by day, and more things happening and more collaborative efforts, hopefully. I think that would change that. I don't think it's going to make me a faster cyclist. I don't think it's going to make me a better cyclist. It's already there for working on bikes. So, I mean, I don't have anything really to complain. It's not like we have to convert all of our parts when we get them from, imperial, bolts to metric nuts and bolts. Right. That part doesn't really change much. I don't know, just like I said, with the tools, it kind of sucks that you can't use the stuff that you have for bikes on everything because, it doesn't work that way. But
so maybe the problem of a lot of these tooling things, right, especially in our small little niche of the bike industry, maybe those problems are more problematic having both systems in place than, actually just pulling the trigger and switching.
Can you think of an industry other than the medical industry or medical devices that uses the metric system more than the cycling industry worldwide? I mean, because even here in the United States, every shop's got metric tools. Everybody understands the metric system pretty well because of the way that the bikes are made, and then the racing that they're probably watching. Like if we're watching the Tour de France, they almost never are talking about things in miles per hour or miles or things of that nature, or the riders' weights. If they're ever talking about that, they don't get into that in pounds. They're usually talking about kilograms and watts per kilogram. I mean,
I would guess that there's tons and tons of examples of things other than cycling.
Can you think of anything?
Oh, I mean, like Formula One racing. I mean, like anything that's not necessarily American centric would probably be on metric.
Okay, so if we went and tore apart one of those Formula One cars, do you think that that's going to be, by and large part, all metric, like a nice road bike?
I have zero experience with that, but I would assume that any of those would be driven by metric. Don't you think?
I don't know.
I have no idea. I imagine that a large amount of cars are.
I'd have to disagree with that. I'd say like a NASCAR is probably going to be more imperial versus
maybe.
Yeah.
Working on cars here, working on all American Dodge Rams and Chevys and Fords. Guess what? Our American cars, they're all metric sizes if you want to grab a tool and work on it. Most of the car is metric.
For sure. NASCAR potentially would be, more American centric.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking like general car industry. Like I wonder Like we make a lot of cars here.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of cars made everywhere. So who knows?
And there are, with different cars, I know that I had a Ford truck for a while. There were parts and pieces on there that were done with both metric and imperial, which
that's confusing.
Yeah, it just kind of sucks because like, well, what's going on here, folks?
What about you guys? You guys have the big vans. Those are German?
Yeah, metric.
Okay, so everything's metric.
Yeah, I believe so. Is yours, Lance?
Yeah, everything's metric. Yeah,
gotcha.
Like all the bolts and tools, they're all metric.
Yeah, and we've got bikes from Switzerland. BMCs, and Lance has got a mountain bike that's going to have a lot of imperial measurements on it. Then he's got a road bike that's going to have a lot of metric measurements on it. That's the conundrum right there. Is
the BMC mountain bikes are imperial.
Well, if you're talking about wheel size or headsets or frame size.
What about the bolts themselves?
They're going to be done in metric.
Okay,
so they're all.
That's what I would think.
Yeah, but the sizing and
the sizing.
Usually, like when they're measuring parts and pieces on the bike, like the frame size,
they give it in,
and the wheel size is done in imperial inches. And like I said, the steer tube or the headset measurements are going to be imperial, but just about everything else is going to be metric. So that part just doesn't make sense. It's like, why are we using two different units of measurement? So
yeah, that's super odd.
I don't know. Is there a point to this whole conversation? Other than this is something we wanted to talk about.
The listeners, I bet you are probably like, why are we talking?
But we need to really hammer home why metric units are the superior units. Even within imperial, you have to constantly convert your units. Ounces to pounds, pounds to imperial tons, which for some reason differs from a metric ton by 1.6%. Again, in metric, there are 1,000 grams in a kilogram and 1,000 kilograms in a ton. In imperial, there are 16 ounces in a pound and 2,240 pounds in an imperial ton. Why? You aren't even following the same conversion conventions as your other units. This is insanely cumbersome. The chances of conversion errors even within your own damn system is high. Never mind having to convert to metric.
But it's an interesting topic because it's what did we say? It's exactly 230 years since our since we lost the opportunity to switch to metric.
Yeah. I honestly think that it comes back to, again, stubbornness and just this unwillingness to adapt to what the rest of the world is. And there's a certain arrogance that comes along with that. And, that kind of does describe a lot of the American mindset.
Americans can't be bothered to switch. Adopting the metric system is something that a majority of Americans would have to get behind. There'd need to be a popular movement.
Goes into things like you talked about, like politics. It's like, all right, well, why are we so polarized on this? Why can't it be something where, like, you know what? Let's take a look at this thing rationally and logically, and which one makes more sense? Let's do that.
Today, the metric movement in the US is still creeping along.
For what it's worth, we might actually be in the middle of a much sneakier metric takeover. The US may not be officially metric, but meters and kilograms have found their niches. First, US scientists do not mess around with US measures. And last but not least, imperial units are now technically based on metric definitions. An inch is defined as 25.4 millimeters, and a pound is 0.45359237 kilograms. Metric really is everywhere.
Yeah. So that would be nice if we could do that with more things. It's like, what makes sense? Not because we don't want to do what the other side is not doing, or not do it because that's what the other side wants, but let's take a look at this globally and figure out like what's in everybody's best interest. And I think it is. I think it's in everybody's best interest if we make that switch.
We'll see. Could happen. It'll be interesting to see if this happens in our lifetime.
What say you, Lance? Is this going to happen in your lifetime?
I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's too expensive to switch for the U.S., and I don't think it will pass with our bipartisan system. So I don't think so.
Now with the
Brandy, what do you think?
Hi, Brandy Hepler.
She can't hear.
She can't hear.
Ask her what she thinks. We can hear her.
What's her? She gets to be the final judge and jury right here.
Should we be on the metric system or the imperial system in the U.S.?
It's a very interesting question.
And what do you think?
We want an answer.
She doesn't care.
That's right.
Honestly, metrics are hard for some of us.
Yeah, she says metrics are hard.
Measurements,
agreed.
Units of 10, huh? Yeah. All right. Well, any closing thoughts on this? Anything funny you have to add there, Mr. Hepler?
I wish. No, just funny looking. That's all.
Matt, anything closing on this?
No, I mean, I think that there's the history behind it is super interesting, and I think that's one of the fun parts about it is like having these really odd measurement things, and it's all based on. There was some king in England or whatever, and I think he changed all the measurements and to make them all based on his body parts at one point. I mean, there's just like crazy history with the history of measurements, and even the meter being slightly off from what they wanted it to be. I find that history part pretty interesting. So read your history books, people, and try to remember it better than I do.
Okay, so here's a couple pros of the imperial system that I just looked up. And
Sure.
these are the 3 bullet points that came off from the top. Real quick, if you guys agree or disagree, and then we'll move on.
I disagree to all of them.
It's easier to use fractions. Would you say that that's...
Everything's 10 based, so I know what...
Yes,
we're talking about...
That's nice.
No, we're talking about pros of the imperial system.
Oh.
Not the metric system. These are the
Wait,
3 things
what?
that came up here. Yeah, it's easier to use fractions. So we're talking about measurements. If you're using fractions like 5 3/8, they're saying that that's easier to use than saying 56 units of whatever measurement. Do you guys agree with that?
No,
that's a questionable
I disagree.
advantage.
Okay. All right, Google, you're 0 for 1. The second thing, it's easier way to understand height and weight using the imperial system, not the metric.
Height, yes. Pounds of weight is a weird number. I mean, that's a weird thing, right? So
Yeah.
I don't think that it's easier that way. So maybe 50% on that. Because, I mean, if you think of a foot and you're like, oh, this person's 6 foot tall, then you kind of, like it's a foot. You can easily reference that.
As opposed to
meters,
2.5 meters,
as
or
opposed
something
to
like
meters, and being
Or
like,
2
well,
meters.
this was based on our planet size, so that's hard to figure out. I don't know. That's my take on that. 50-50 Google on that one.
Okay, and then the last one: most recipe measurements are empirical, which is easier to understand than the metric system. I don't
That's not a real
agree with
answer,
that. That's
but-
just like that's the way that you were born and raised, and not born, but the way that you were raised and what you were raised to think and know and understand and comprehend. So, I mean, I could say it'd be the exact opposite if we're talking metric.
I feel like the way that I'm trying to remember my history on how they figured out what a liter was, but I feel like it's something like with the weight of water or something like that. Like it's like a liter is exactly some sort of cube volume of distance to the weight of water. I don't know. We should look that up. That'd be interesting.
So-
I don't think that ounces are easier for cooking recipes, or I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't see the cooking recipe answer being a good valid one there.
Yeah, the first one that you said that you kind of agree on, the measurement of like a foot is easier to understand. And
It's easier to kind of see that.
Yeah,
kinda.
it's an easier thing to, I think, wrap your head around.
Yeah,
so
sure.
if you're driving your big RV down the road and all of a sudden you see a sign coming up saying max overhead and it says 4,267 millimeters max headroom versus 14 feet. I mean, I think 14 feet is probably an easier number to rationalize in your head. Right.
Well, they would do they would do it in meters. but
Exactly. And that was the thing that my response to this little meme thing that I'm looking at here is they wouldn't do it in millimeters. They would do it in meters.
Yeah.
And then that makes it very close. Therefore, that could
It'd
go
be
either
like
way.
it'd be like the same thing if they were like this overhead passes in inches.
Just, yeah.
Like, well,
Why
that's
would you do
tricky.
that? Yeah.
That's a good one. Good
When,
game to play.
When I rented the van in Europe, there was a sticker on the windshield that said, "Your van is I don't know, what was it? It is 3.5 meters tall." Or no, not that. It was 2.5 meters tall. So don't go under any bridge that is over 2.5 meters. I'm losing my signal.
They had problems. Someone
Did you get that?
Someone made
you're good.
that mistake. That's a costly mistake to make.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah.
I think that's about that.
The most ridiculous thing about all of this, every single one of these imperial measurements are legally defined by the metric system. America is already using the metric system, and most of the population is oblivious to it.
The US government kept quietly inching towards metric, officially recognizing the meter and the kilogram as the fundamental standards of length and mass. So technically, our yard, our pound, our inch have all been officially defined relative to the meter and the kilogram.
The scientific standards at the heart of the scientific community, you've got companies, they're metric. And you might have certain examples where other units are used in day-to-day life, but where it counts, America is metric.
Sorry if this was a boring thing. It's just kind of an interesting topic, and I think that this actually could make for some good afterthought. So if you want to jump on Facebook or Instagram and jump into the comments on the post for this one and let us know your thoughts, I think that could spark a little bit of interesting or funny conversation.
Let us know your thoughts.
And what's funny is, like, I have dove into the Reddits of this and looking at the comments on there, and there's some pretty funny conversations that are there to be had. Maybe we should have shared a little bit of that, but anyway, we'll move on. And if you have anything to say, we'll go back and revisit this if you do have something to say. Very cool. All right, we're gonna get into some next stuff here. Let's see here.
Ice cream sandwich.
No, not ice cream sandwiches.
Quit swearing, Jake.
Hold on a second
The
here.
phrase of the day is "Shut up, Evan."
Oh, Evan's not even here. I can't push that one. That's the wrong one.
We got to do backpedaling.
Oh, crap.
This is rock talk.
Rock talk.
Oh, actually, we should get into rock talk. I bet you found some rocks since you've been out in Arizona.
He did find some rocks. So let's talk about rocks real quick, Lance.
Okay, yeah, I went back to the same site that we went to a year ago that had all the very cool fire agates out west of Phoenix, about an hour. And yeah, we spent a great day and found a whole bunch of really cool fire agates.
Were you biking along looking for rocks, or were you just like, do you have to be on your knees scouting around with a magnifying glass, or what?
Well, you have to be pretty close to see them. They're not really all that big. So we found an area where there was fire agates, and then Brandy and the dog searched for a couple hours while I rode for a couple hours, and then I searched too. So
nice.
Lance, you post up some of your rock counting stuff on TikTok. You have a TikTok account. Do you want to share that with everybody? Because he actually has posted up some cool stuff.
I got to get on your TikTok now. The ticks or the talks.
I've had a few. I think it's just Dr. Hep, DRHEPP, I think is my TikTok handle. I'm not even sure.
I don't know how to use TikTok. How do you find people on here?
Be careful. TikTok is a big, giant sucking time hole. If you
Now, you've watched some stuff on there. You've done a lot of work on rocks on there. Are those your more popular videos that you've posted?
Yeah, they have been. I have some cycling things on there, but my rock counting ones have actually been more popular. That's kind of funny.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. Go check that out if you want to see more about that. All right, now getting back to our regular scheduled program.
Champ Bailey. I'm all about having fun.
Champ Bailey.
Champ is here.
You got some cocktails in you?
Very good. Yeah, I need some cocktails. We had some very good racing that happened this last weekend. There was a World Cup cyclocross race in Spain, in Benidorm, Spain. It was like near the coast, and it was actually a very good race. It was warm for the first time in Europe. It was like 60 degrees and sunny, so it was a fast, dry race. The big three all showed up. It was very fun racing to watch, and surprise, surprise, Matthew Vanderpool straight up beat Wout van Aert in this race.
Yeah,
that is a surprise.
Exactly.
No joke, man.
Some nicer weather, probably better course conditions, maybe.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My internet is sucking at the moment. So
hear you just fine.
Vanderpool made a move on the last lap and got in front of Wout before the final corner, and that was just enough for him to beat him. Wout was winding up for a big sprint, but there was kind of a sharp corner coming into that last thing, and he just about splayed himself all over the barriers, and he saved it with a pretty good move, but Vanderpool beat him. So that's kind of exciting. It brings more intrigue to the World Championships coming up.
Yeah, I just said last week that I don't think that Vanderpool has a chance, snowball's chance in hell of catching Wout right now, and he was going to beat him by over a minute, the champs. Yeah, that didn't happen this weekend, but champs are still yet to come. But this kind of made me kind of want to backpedal a little bit, but I'm still going to stand my ground and say that Wild's going to come out and show some gears that aren't that we haven't seen yet. So
that's quite possible. It makes it much more interesting to watch. That it really could be anybody's race. Interestingly enough, this was Tom Pidcock's last cyclocross race. He actually started very well, got a great first and second lap and had the lead, but then he actually faded to 5th. So yeah, he kind of faded near the end, so which was interesting. The women's race was won by Fem Van Empel, and with Puck Pieterisi being second place, and Sharon Van Anrouge. That's the name I was trying to think of last weekend that I couldn't think of off the top of my head. But
gotcha.
Again, that was a fast, crazy race. I think the American man in was Curtis White. I think he did pretty well. Where is he? Looking, and now as I'm looking, I can't find him. Never mind. He was barely in the top 30. And Clara Hansinger, something must have happened because she was in the 30s as well, like 38th or something for the women's race. So that didn't go very well for her. So interesting. There is another World Cup race next week. And then the week after that is the World Championships. So that should be interesting to see how that goes. Also in racing, we finished the Tour Down Under. And the racing was actually ended up being quite good. And I don't know if this is a surprise or not, but Jay Vine ended up winning the overall classification in the whole race. So Jay Vine is racing for UAE this year. If you remember, he's the guy who won like the Zwift Academy and got a contract. And then he ended up winning a tour stage last year. And now he's on UAE with Pogača.
Yep.
But I think they're going to do different races. I think that Pogača is going to be doing the tour, and they're going to have Jay Vine do something else. But that should be interesting to see what kind of happens with those.
Where is Jay Vine from?
He's Australian.
Australian? Okay.
He is from Australia. So it was good for him to be down there, and he did really well. And actually, who else did really good in the overall? Who was second? It was, why can't I think of his name? The guy that won the last stage.
Oh, Simon Yates?
Yeah, Simon Yates.
Gotcha.
He raced really well too. And Caleb Ewing actually raced really well as well. He went down there without a team because he is on Lotto Soudal, and Lotto Soudal got relegated last year. Which means that they'll still go to all the Grand Tours, but they're not required to go to all the Grand Tours, being relegated. And so him being, one of the best sprinters, and he wanted to go showcase for Australia because
he's Australian.
Because Caleb Ewan is from Australia. Yeah. And he went down there. They had like a crit the day before, and he smoked the whole field. He won the crit, so.
I wonder if he's going to be a favorite for some green jersey points and some sprint.
Think so. I mean, he seems like he's feeling pretty good now. He's one of those like little cagey guys, and he's
can get hurt,
squirrely a little bit, and he seems like he always finds himself going down and ends up leaving the race, the tour altogether, or he ends up hurting himself and he's not able to contend. So I don't know. We'll see. Did you happen to catch? Do you guys ever watch Cam Nichols on YouTube? He's got a cycling YouTube page, and it's pretty well done. And he's a big BMC guy too, which is kind of cool. Yeah. But he did a ride recently, one of their little hot rides that they do, and Caleb Ewing showed up to it. And Caleb was like kind enough to say, yeah, it's cool if you videotape me and put it up on YouTube and whatnot. Nice. It was just kind of funny seeing how strong he was against some guys that are good local guys, strong guys, but just they're mere mortals compared to Caleb when he wants to get after it.
Yeah, I know that YouTube channel. Fun. I don't follow it anymore, but he seems really nice.
Yeah. So I don't watch all of his videos, but I'll watch a few of them when he's got some stuff to say. Pretty well done. But going back to the tour though of Down Under, any other notables that you can think of, Lance, in terms of the overall GC finish?
No, there weren't real.
How about
there wasn't a lot.
Just missing the podium? American Magnus Sheffield coming in 4th place. He was 4th overall in GC.
Broke up on me. I missed it.
Magnus Sheffield, American Magnus Sheffield from Ineos came in 4th place. Just missed the podium, but I don't know. I thought that was kind of cool.
He's still like 23 or 22 years old. He's still very young.
Correct.
I wonder what he's going to do this summer.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a good question. Will he be at the Tour? Probably not. But
in support, maybe.
I don't know. But
you never know.
He's going to be interesting to watch when we get to the classics this spring. So it could be fun to watch.
It'll be fun spring.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, there wasn't really any other big names in the top 10 that are going to be like, movers and shakers this year. But that was pretty cool to see Jay Vine coming off of his Zwift prowess to
This morning was also the first stage of the Tour de San Juan in Argentina, and Sam Bennett. It was a sprinter stage. It all came back together at the end, and Sam Bennett, he had just a fantastic lead out by his teammate, and man, he just kind of looked unstoppable. So it's good early season results for Sam Bennett. Already.
Who's he with this year? I know that he obviously left.
Bora.
He's with Bora now. Okay.
Yeah,
he was having some issues. He wasn't getting along with Quick Step back in the day. So it's interesting to see that he's back and riding strong. I'm just curious to what his demeanor is with his current team and if he's got a big head on his shoulders still.
Yeah, it should be interesting.
But if he's looking strong in that, he's another reason why Cavendish is going to have a hard time winning stages. So if you've got him and if Caleb's looking strong and that Wout's going to potentially be back in there, and if Vanderpool wants to come and mix it up, and there's probably a half dozen other strong sprinters out there. Again, not wanting to talk about Captain Asshat, but that's just more reasons to think that he's not going to have that opportunity.
We'll see how it plays out.
True story.
It's going to be fun.
Wasn't there something with Evenepoel like whining about the finish being dicey or scary or unsafe or something like that?
There was a nasty corner right before the final last 700 meters, and it was a little dicey, and so Evenepoel mentioned it.
Yeah, like he does. So. All right, anything else?
Nope, that's it. Camp out.
Anything going on? Running, triathlon?
I don't think there's a huge triathlon news. I think a couple weeks ago, this is old news now, Ironman did end up choosing to split the Ironman World Championships. The women's race is going to be in Kona. The men's race, they were like, we don't know where it's going to be, but all the rumors were pointing towards Nice, France, and then they did announce that it was going to be in Nice, France.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. That'll be fun.
Via text, I talked with Mark Radford yesterday.
Okay.
He is at some training camp down in Arizona with a bunch of like big name pro names down there training and whatnot. Do you know anything about that? I didn't really get a chance to go back and forth with him too much, but
I have no idea which training camp he's at. I feel like there used to be like one where Heather Jackson used to go to, or be a part of this like training camp. Sure. So it might be that group, but yeah, that would be fun.
Okay.
Hopefully he's having some decent weather. Might be cold, right? He's probably in Tucson.
Maybe, yeah.
And,
but it's dry, so I mean.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all the pools are outdoor there, so you could be a little cold.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. Skip that stuff. Just ride your bike.
Just ride.
Awesome. Let's move this thing into the one last thing. I was going to do a Patreon drawing this week, but I don't have our little Patreon can.
Okay. We'll do it next time.
You know what? I think I'm going to do it. I'm still going to do a Patreon drawing. It's just not going to be live on the air. And I'm going to put it in the notes of, well, not in the show. Maybe I will put it in the show notes, but it'll be up on the Instagram post because we post up the thumbnail that we do for every week. And then maybe I'll put that there and let somebody be a winner of something kind of cool.
Check the Instagram, people.
We just added a bunch of new stuff to the giveaway bin. So there's going to be some cool things in there. Cool. Let's jump into one last thing. Matt LeGrand, you always get to go first.
Or do you want to backpedal, Jake? You got nothing to share.
Oh, I guess my life is so boring that I have nothing to backpedal.
Backpedal.
Should we save the backpedal for last? Just kidding.
Lance, you want to do backpedal?
I'm the worst. I really am.
My back pedal is pretty boring. I've been on Zwift. I'm doing that Zwift Tour de Zwift thing. I think I've done maybe 5 of those Tour de Zwift things. I don't know. It's something.
This has been Jake Sucks Us Up podcast host. All right. So Tour de Zwift.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Sunny days. Do you want to forward pedal? What are you gonna ride your bike outside this week, Matt?
I'm gonna ride my bike outside. Yeah. Okay. I'm not gonna say that I won't Zwift on a sunny day, but because sometimes the day gets away from you and it's dark before you can actually get out on the road.
That's true.
Which today is gonna end up. This is exactly what's gonna happen today, probably. But we'll see.
Cool. All right, Lance, you want to back pedal?
Got anything, Lance?
Yeah, I did manage to do another 20-hour week, which was
that's good.
Which was kind of exciting for me. I'm still feeling really quite good. I even did a century another one day last week. It was kind of a calm day, and it wasn't too bad. As I rode all the way up to Scottsdale and all the way up to Carefree and back down into Mesa, and so that was kind of a fantastic day. But
wow.
Yeah, and then I went looking for rocks, and then I'm just kind of trying to stick to my workouts, and I've been doing interval sessions on almost every ride except for my endurance rides. So it's progressing.
How are you liking the roads down there? Road quality good, and then the other question is how are the drivers?
Mesa, when it was, the city planners made big wide roads, so almost every road has a big shoulder, and so and the places where people mostly ride are not very busy with big wide shoulders with a bike lane. So yeah, I've had no driver issues. The road, it's just been in good shape.
That's huge.
Yeah. So it makes it nice to ride. The road structure is good here. Very good.
Looking forward to that. We're about 5 weeks out ish from our training camp. Some 6 weeks maybe?
It's beginning of March, so I think it's 6 weeks.
Yeah. So, man, I got some work to do. All right. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. My back pedal is, hold on a second here. Sorry, I had to send somebody to voicemail. My back pedal is that I rode on the trainer for just shy of 9 hours last week.
9 hours? That's good.
Well, actually, one day was a holiday, and I did ride outside, but we already talked about that last week. But yeah,
still, you're getting some good hours then.
Yeah.
How's the hip feel?
Okay. Okay. We did a team ride on Thursday night again, and the course that was chosen had a long climb in it, which wasn't that big of a deal. But then there was one short climb that took about anywhere from a minute and a half to a minute and 15, depending on how hard you were going. If you wanted to stay with a group, and we're supposed to be minding certain watts per kilogram, but whenever you get a group of competitive guys together, it never stays there. Next thing you know, there was a couple times that I was holding 600, 700, 800 watts to get up this climb to keep up with the group. And finally I just said, I'm gonna let them go because that wasn't feeling 100%. And I was really tight the next day, which kind of sucked. And thankfully went to acupuncture and massage. She's kind of does a little bit of physical therapy, massage, and then finishes with the acupuncture. And that helped it a little bit. And then I did a ton of yard work this past weekend, and that didn't help things. Oof. So what was supposed to be a 10-hour week, I just kind of capped it. I think it was 840 or 845 or something like that. So it was all right. But we'll get back to it this week, and hopefully this will be the week that I can get it up to 10 hours. So, and we should have some decent weather. So the plan is, yes, get outside.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah. Hey, remember that one last thing stuff?
One last thing.
Remember that one time that one podcast where I got after the one last thing a little too soon? God, what an idiot. Yeah. I think it might be time to revisit one last thing.
I posted a video this week, like every week, and I kind of mentioned this in a podcast, roughly talking about this Apple feature called Race Routes. And that's exactly what I made a video about. Not necessarily the nicest video to the Apple Watch feature because it's not for racing and it's not good at routing. It's called Race Routes. And I think my main beef with it is just the name of it, right? Just don't call it Race Routes because you're racing yourself or you're trying to better your times for yourself. It doesn't help you with routing that much. It is a cool feature. I do use it. But I do think that Apple could use some sort of race navigation stuff hey, import the race route that you want to do and we'll make sure you stay on course. that would be helpful for people.
So if they offered that feature and called it something else, so in essence, just a game of semantics here, would you have been okay with it? Would you think it's a good feature? So if they called it like...
It's not a bad feature. It's fine.
Beat yourself.
Beat yourself.
That's
what it's in the video. I'm like...
That could be bad, but anyway.
There was, I think that people threw out like Ghost Runner where you're like, I mean, there's things that are like this. Apple's not the only person to have a feature like this. Strava has their like racing yourself piece. You know how they have the new like invisible kind of guy or whatever your previous, and that stuff works, right? Like you want to beat your previous time on some sort of sprint or whatever. It is. So it's good. It's a good feature. It's a good thing to have. I just don't think it should have been called race routes necessarily.
So they screwed up naming it.
Yeah. Whatever. They can do whatever. It's. I almost kind of think in some ways I'm like, well, this is a stupid video just to kind of make a video complaining about the naming of this.
What
feature.
watches are you wearing today, Matt?
Garmin 955, and I've been wearing this watch for about 6 months, which means the next video that's going to come out is the Garmin 955 after 6 month review.
Cool. So, is that the solar or the non-solar?
This is the non-solar.
Non-solar, and your review of that is still favorable?
It's very good. Yeah,
gotcha.
It is very good. Yeah, I will be posting a video this week, hopefully in the next couple of days with this, how's it held up over 6 months?
Sure.
And basically, there's not a huge problem. I don't have a ton of problems with it. They had some bugs and they had some issues, but they've, Garmin, they'll iterate on the software and they kind of roll through. They get through some of those bugs. And I think it usually does take them 3 months or so of iterating on bugs to kind of get things solid. And it's been solid lately.
Any more updates? We kind of talked about some of the ECG stuff last week. Have you had any more information come down the pipeline as to what watches might actually see that? Because they did mention that there are some current watches that
should
might be able to be integrated in there.
They had their the FDA approval for ECGs or EKGs of like on watch based stuff, which is what Apple does. They have that same thing with their watch. And so it's a good concept. I mean, we have a friend of the podcast, David Goodman, who checked his Apple Watch and was having an arrhythmia with his heart. And, not to say that it like saved his life or anything, but it definitely helped diagnose the problem.
Yeah. It prompted him to go see a doctor as opposed to just not doing anything about it at all. And who knows how it
go to the hospital, right? So Garmin will have this feature. It's all been approved. I'm guessing it's just going to be kind of like current watches. Yeah. So this is just, I have no idea. I have no insider information, but I'm guessing it's like if you have even the baseline, Garmin 255, 955, all the Phoenix watches, Epix watch, Garmin Enduro 2, the Tactics watch. I'm guessing all of those like Series 7 Phoenix watches and above. I'm guessing all of those will get the ECG, EKG feature.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, the article that I read about it said it's select, but they didn't say which ones. I'm guessing that a lot of them carry similar pieces of hardware inside there that that would be exactly. So
yeah.
Interesting.
Yep. It'll be very interesting. And so I don't expect it to go back super far. So if you haven't bought a Garmin watch in the past year, I'm guessing you won't get this feature, but just don't go having, heart problems. Just stay healthy, people.
Just do it. Yep. One last thing.
I'm not sure if I have anything in one last thing. There is a mountain bike race here in the Phoenix area this weekend. Short track on Saturday and XCO on Sunday, and I'm kind of deciding whether I want to go throw in and race my bike.
What does your training plan say?
I haven't decided yet. It does. It does not fit into the training plan at all. But
who sanctions the race? Is it USAC or is it a different body?
I don't know. It's called the Arizona Classic Mountain Bike. It's called the Mountain Bike Classic of Arizona. So I don't know. It looks like sign up is through Race Result. So I don't know who it's sanctioned by.
Gotcha.
Just local race.
So you're going to do it then, right?
Yeah, he'll do it.
I don't know. I might. We'll see. I haven't decided.
That means he'll do it.
Is the top end feeling good?
Yeah, it doesn't feel too bad, but I'm, better than I thought. I haven't done a lot of top end work. It's been mostly threshold and sweet spot work, not a lot of top end stuff. I've done a little bit of VO2, but nothing over VO2. So I don't really have much of a top end, but that's what early season racing is for. So.
Awesome. All right. My one last thing. God, I've gone back and forth on this. I've got one last things. but I'm not sure which one do you guys want to hear about. Do you want to hear my one last thing
First one.
about
Let's hear about the first
Wahoo,
one.
or one last thing about Obra?
Wahoo.
Wahoo. All right, Wahoo. I kind of feel bad for that company right now. They're I mean, I don't think that it's going to be a situation where they're going to go away, but I have a sneaking suspicion that there's going to be a lot of change coming down the pipeline for them.
They have like a bad debt thing or something.
Yeah, they're saying that their business model currently isn't sustainable, and I think a lot of it has to do with just what's going on in the state of the world, and they're trying to push and be innovative to a certain degree, but I think they may have bitten off a little bit more than they could chew in hopes that things were going to go a different direction, and then now we're sitting in a situation where their debt rating or their just overall company rating is like kind of risky right now.
Yeah.
And, there's some pundits that are speculating that maybe there might be some, possible bankruptcy following just so they can reorganize the company. I don't think it's gonna be a situation where they go away. I don't think that that's where they're going to get. I don't want to see them have to lose people, because I've gotten to know quite a few people at that company, and they're great folks.
I hate to break it to you, that's going to happen. They're going to lay off a significant percentage, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just going to be, it might be like 10% of the workforce, but that's going around everywhere.
Yeah. I just think that they make a fine quality product. And I really quite enjoy the people that I've worked with over there. And it seems like it's a good ecosystem, and there's a lot of potential there, but in the same breath, maybe this could be a good thing.
If they hired you as CEO right now, what changes would you make?
Me as a CEO, what changes would I make?
Like immediately, like we got to trim some fat. What are we going to do?
You got to go back and from trimming fat. That's a good question. I'd love to see their books, see where they're spending a ton of money right now. But I think in the beginning, you've got to just start with the basic no-brainers. Yep. You got to get rid of athletes that maybe you're on payroll that aren't doing too much. And, I hate to say like Ian Boswell, I don't know exactly how much more he's doing from them from a marketing perspective, or if he's just a good face, but you want to see him stick around because he's a great guy. We had him on the podcast. We love him. But if they've got a bunch of athletes, then that's probably somewhere where you're going to have to stop. The next thing I would suggest is like your kicker is your flagship device. That's what puts you on the map, and that's what you've done. How much has that device changed in the last 5 years? From
minimal changes.
Yeah, from version 4 to version 6. Like we haven't seen any like astronomical big changes.
And that is probably their flagship product. And you got to figure the people that are going to buy those big expensive bike trainers have already done it.
Yeah, and the industry is becoming more and more saturated with more and more people offering stuff at lower prices. And so you have to innovate there, or you have to figure something else out to make it more of a desirable device. Mm-hmm. You and I were having a conversation about the Kicker bike, and I think that there's a lot of room for an improvement on that device. I think that's a fantastic device. I still think it was a miss, or I think it's probably the best of all of the bikes on the market, but it was a miss when they raised the price $500 and really didn't offer you too much more in terms of like what this value is going to be. Like if you sat a Kicker V1 next to a Kicker V2 and like just blindfold test them, you're not going to notice a big difference between the two. Yes, there are going to be some things with respect to the Wi-Fi future-proofing it, especially if you're doing the racing, and some of that erg smoothing stuff is kind of nice, but there wasn't like
it's not huge
marked difference. And when they blew those things out and they were having sales, and like you were seeing these Kicker version 1 bikes for sale on their website for like $2,100. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden they've got a version 2 on there that's $4,000 now. It's like, all right, like there's not a huge difference between these. So why? What's going on? So they could justify that price though. And you made a good point, and it was something that I've thought of before too, is in that if you make all of the adjustments electronic, whereas you're not having manual, like having to flip a lever and adjust something and flip the lever back to lock it in place, versus like your car seat in your car. Like if you and your wife share a car and there's setting 1 and setting 2, you push a button and it goes right where you want it to go. That'd be fantastic. Or if you need to do like micro adjustments while you're actually riding the bike to work with your fit.
Yeah, have that be electric.
That'd be fantastic. If you had those two options, I think that you might sell some more bikes.
I imagine that that's fairly difficult to do because those are motors, for each of those little pieces. But they do it in cars, and it's going to be expensive, but this is an expensive product. It's a premium product.
Yep.
And I think you'll see a lot of people justify that purchase because they'll be like, this is for me and my wife. That's twice the bike for, the same amount of space that's taking up in your house.
The only hang up on that is if you guys want to ride together, well, maybe they have a tandem attachment or something like that you can
tandem. They need a tandem attachment for sure.
That's where you're going to sell million bikes.
Yeah. All indoor bikes need to be tandem, please. Make that happen, Wahoo.
I think that they've got a good thing going with RGT. there are still a ton of people on Zwift, and we've switched over all of our rides that we do on Tuesdays and Thursdays through Dialed Cycling to RGT, and we've got more people that are coming over, but our numbers aren't near what they used to be, and there's a lot of people that just don't want to do it, even though we had, like, Wahoo gave us these discount codes for 3 months for free to use the whole Wahoo X system, which is a pretty fantastic platform.
It's a very good system.
A lot of folks just didn't want to do it for one reason or another. And there are some little quirky things in RGT that I would love to see changed, but if they could kind of innovate on that front, and I always say this and you shake your head and say it's probably not going to happen, but if they could somehow, some way work with Google Street Maps or Google Maps to get those routes that you upload to look like the actual routes, even if it was just like loosely close to it, that would be fantastic. I'm sure that that's not going to happen, but
you just got to think like a software engineer. Like, okay, there's major hurdle problems to do that. So,
but even if it, and I was talking with a friend of ours on the team, David Barna, even if it was something where they came to me and said, hey, that's fine, we can do that, but if you want to make that work, for the GPS file that you're uploading is going to cost you X dollars, but then it gets to live in your library, I'd gladly pay. Like, if I could set up a training route that I wanted to do and have it be the Google Street View and have it be, $5 to $20 or something like that, I would pay for that to live in my database of rides that I can do. And if there was some sort of way that I could share that with other people, that would be even better. Like, imagine if we could do virtual flogging routes and have everybody join us and they can see it. And then if somebody else wanted to host a ride, then somehow we can share, like maybe like the way we share routes on Strava, but let the end user foot the bill for some of that if it were to work that way. I don't know. That could be a big selling point, though.
Sure. It'll be a huge selling point. I just think it's a difficult engineering hurdle.
Sure.
So,
maybe at some point in time. I'm sure that they could do it if they really wanted to, but I just don't think that it's going to be cost effective for them.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I just think if I'm the new Wahoo CEO, you just like you said, like double down on kind of like what's worked, which is like Kicker, and I think by computers.
By computers, yeah. I'd probably end up scrapping that watch.
I would totally scrap the watch.
So I wouldn't.
Then I know that they probably have a new watch coming out soon, which is, who knows? Maybe they won't do that. I mean, I could see them starting to make some major changes. Usually when something like this happens, they start to make major changes at the top. And that's like a new plan for Wahoo. So and I would give away a year of Wahoo X with every Kicker purchase, a whole year.
That's a fantastic idea.
Because then you're getting more people on RGT, you're getting to fill that out a little bit, and then you're also like, you get them kind of hooked on it, right? This is like the drug pusher, like Lance. He's like a drug pusher. He's like, let's get you first one free. First one's free, guys. First one's free. Yeah, so you get that, and then they're going to pay the next year.
And I do think that more people need to go check out RGT. I think it's a good platform. It's not quite as diverse as Zwift in terms of all of the different lands and the routes and all that other stuff. And Zwift is a pretty refined machine. It's got its little quirky hangups and whatnot. But
it's good.
I think that RGT for when you compare dollar for dollar what you get for Wahoo X versus just paying for a Zwift, I think that that's a better value. That's just my 2 cents. But all of the people are on Zwift. I mean, when I jumped on my trainer ride yesterday, that only lasted for 30 minutes because I was absolutely zapped. Before I actually chose a land to ride in, you can look and see all of the different ones, and you can see how many people are in those lands. The most populated one was the Borrego Springs because it's a very flat route, and there was 32 people riding on a Sunday.
Brutal.
Granted, it was in the afternoon, evening-ish, but
what would it be on Zwift?
It would be like if you looked at the Tempest Future or TikTok or one of those flatter ones, it's going to be hundreds of people, if not thousands of people.
Thousands, yeah.
There is a difference there, and it's kind of funny because they do litter it with bots. So there's bots all over the place, which is fine and well.
But they're bots.
But they're bots. It says that they're bots, and you see the people on there. So you're always like trying to race up to catch up to the people. Like, I know that we're not talking to each other, and I know that you're just on there doing a workout, but there's just something to be said about, I'm riding with somebody else who's actually a human.
I agree.
And there's that. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents. I really hope that Wahoo can get their stuff sorted out because as a company, I quite like them and I want them to be successful. And I've really enjoyed carrying their products. I've enjoyed getting to know people at that organization, and I want to see them continue to be successful. So
that was your first one. Last thing. What was your second one?
Obra.
I'm
disappointed in them.
What's going on?
They had their annual meeting this past weekend where They vote on new rule changes. They elect 2 new board members and all that other fun stuff. That wasn't the part that I was disappointed in. They're going to do what they're going to do. And the fact that they do have the ability for the membership to actually show up and to be a part of that voting process, I think is a good thing, because you can actually start to affect change if you can actually get people involved and get people there to vote. That's good for the organization as a whole, and not have it be some unilateral decision made by executive directors or board of directors that this is what we think is going to be good for the people. So the people can actually have a say in it. That's a good thing. And the board of directors, they always cycle out 2 and will elect 2 new ones every year for a total board member group of, I think it's 6 plus, I think 3 at-large ones that can be appointed. But anyway, that's good too, because then the people, a part of the organization, can be a part of this decision-making process and helping the organization run as a whole. Anyway, that's not what I was disappointed in. We had the awards party afterwards, and that's where they celebrate the best all-around rider. And I think we had one this year, one person from the team that was a bar winner, which was kind of low for us. Whitney, our little stud.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, she was the bar winner for her category. I know that Chris Surratt was there. I think he was just there because he's a fixture at that place. He generally wins a bar competition, but I don't think he won. But the thing that I was most proud of our team this past year is they show up, they go out, they race. And our team is always putting numbers out there with respect to volunteering, to showing it to races. And just as a whole, I think our team, I haven't looked in the last year or two, but in years past, we've raced probably 2 to 3x more than the next closest team. So we'll send out that much more people out there to show up and register for all the races. When
it helps that we're bigger.
Yeah.
And a lot of teams.
And we don't expect every single team to have those numbers or to thrive to be big or strive to be big, but just getting people out there, we're doing it. And it's everything from your brand new novice Cat 5 and juniors to, like some pretty high level cyclists, and we cover the whole spectrum. So this year, no different than others, we wanted to go out there and compete for the team bar competition, which is the best all-around team. And it's based on how people on your team finish and how they can collect points based on where they finish in the top 15. And we have always made that a goal. Every single year is a goal to go out and win the team competition, because if our team is doing good, we know that individuals are doing good, and individuals are going to go out and race so that they can do well for the team. Well, anyway, they put out the list, and and this was a week ahead of time, and they gave the list of all the people that are going to win the bar competition. Make sure you show up to the party to get your awards. And on that list, there was no mention of a team. And in the email, there was no mention of a team winning the bar competition. I'm like, that's interesting. And that's one of my things that I've always been hung up with on Obra, is that they do not do a good job at all with respect to their teams. They do not promote this competition. They do not promote the teams, other than at the very beginning of the year saying, hey, teams, if you want to be a part of this team competition and be in our registry of teams, give us $150 and we'll put you there and make you be a part of that competition, and you'll show up in the bar competition. All right, that's fine and well. I don't think that it's worth $150 based on what they do, but we're going to do it because we want to compete for that competition, that title.
Yeah.
And then we don't hear from Obra again about the team bar competition until the very end of the year at this awards party. So you have to be there. It's kind of just a tiny little footnote in the end of things, and they hand you an award and say, good job for winning the team competition. It could be so much more, but at the end of the day, it's still important to us. We still want to go out there and we want to do our best, and we want to win this competition. So we, this year, won it for the 4th time in a row.
Right.
Never happened before. First time ever. And there's no mention of it in that pre-email. There was no mention of it in that awards winner list. And then the actual ceremony, they didn't mention it because they said, we have no way of determining whether you guys actually won or not. The results are missing. So their whole database supposedly got erased. And so there's...
Just be like, well, then give us our $150 back.
Exactly. But I actually had a screenshot of it, and because Chris Rat was the one that informed me of this, and I sent him the screenshot. I'm like, hey, this is from December 2nd after the whole season was over. This shows the points, but it's neither here nor there. This is just, again, Obra being Obra, and it's a disappointment that there was no mention of it. It's a disappointment that they couldn't allocate some time or energy or resources to figuring this out ahead of time. And you would think that a team that sends out this many people to go to races and is trying to do a bunch of stuff for the community and is always out volunteering and always out trying to put our best foot forward in the race scene, that they would think that that's a kind of a priority or something that they need to.
It shouldn't matter if our team is putting out volunteer hours, or I think that's a good thing. We should do it. I don't think that it should matter for this team competition unless it's in the rules.
It's not in the rules, but my point was it's not like we're some asshat team that's going out there and belittling people and being arrogant or elitist and all that stuff. We're very welcoming, and we're trying to bring more people to the sport. We're trying to grow the sport.
Arkansas used to beat the snot out of Alabama every cross country race.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter if they were nice about it or arrogant about it or volunteered a whole bunch. Like, they just beat us.
Yeah.
They were there. They always won. And it was not fun, but guess what? That's competition for you.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not going to be in part of, if you don't have a competition, like, don't have the competition.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wonder if that's the way Ober's thinking. If they're thinking like, we're killing this. This is not going to be around next year.
And I don't know if it's something. Well, here they go. They won again. They just sent a lot of people out to race, and like, if you're going to have that kind of opinion, then don't have that competition.
Right. Change the rules or whatever they need to do. But
they set up the rules, and we go out there and we play by the rules, and that's how it is. And we do it gracefully, and we try and encourage more people to come out and race, and that's how you get more people to come out and race. And you've got teams full of competitive people and these teams want to win. They want their, if they've got sponsors, they want to do what's best for their sponsors, get them a little bit of, notoriety, and they want their team to do well. They want their racers to do well. And they're all like doing all this stuff. So you've got all these teams with these competitive people. Pit the teams against each other in a fun, competitive, spirited competition that you kind of make something out of. And that could actually, spur more people to come out and race. And all of a sudden team X, Y, and Z are like, hey, let's get in on this because this is what's on the line. We want to have.
And there's a lot of different ways to do team competitions. So they could make some changes if they need to.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But anyway, the bottom line is it just kind of sucks that 4 years in a row and they just completely screwed the pooch on this one. So that's just my 2 cents. But who am I?
Right. Yeah.
Sorry for the diatribe there, but you asked.
Yeah, no. I am curious. I worry about Obra. I sometimes worry like, road cycling is dying. Obra is, not looking good.
The WSBA calendar looks pretty strong and healthy for road racing this year. So
they need more races down south.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see.
Yeah, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yep, it is.
All right, I think that's about it. Lance, you got anything else to say? You've been kind of quiet over there.
I didn't know that whole team competition thing took a dive. That's really disappointing to hear from Obra, so that's too bad.
Way to end on a downer note, Jake.
Way to go, Jake. Thanks.
Hey, I don't know. It started on a downer note, ended on a downer note. Again, breaking news, Jake is a terrible podcast host. No. All right. We will be back next week with another one of these. Thank you for listening, and until then, bye for now.